Hello and welcome to the Christmas special podcast of the Tilehurst End, the podcast by Reading fans for Reading fans on this weekend, which, let's be honest, we're here a little bit earlier than we thought we were going to be. We had this podcast planned for the days leading up to Christmas. Instead, we're filming a whole week before Christmas begins because Reading's game, unfortunately, has been cancelled. The 150th anniversary game has been cancelled. The festivities are on ice, but we'll hopefully get those done in a couple of months' time. So it just means that Reading fans are able to perhaps enjoy the week leading up to Christmas without having to worry about any kind of relegation battle or anything like that. And we can get into the new year, hopefully, on a much better footing. On that note, of course, hopefully everyone is staying safe this time of year and everything like that. Hopefully, as you're listening to this, I mean, as I say, we're recording this when the Luton game should have taken place. Hopefully, you're not listening to this under some sort of restrictive situation, shall we put it that way, but and hopefully you're also able to enjoy your Christmas. I'm Marc Mayo, host, and I've got with me three of the finest minds that the Tilehurst End has to offer, and I suppose in that sense we should probably start with the editor, Simeon Pickup. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. Not really feeling all that festive given all that's going on in the world, but looking forward to having a lot of Reading stuff to talk over.
Definitely. We'll have the awards and everything later on, just as we tend to do for the end of the year. Also joining us this week, Ben Thomas, the view from the Dolan. Unfortunately, not where you're sat today, but hopefully not too long until you're back in.
No, not at all. It's kind of not a surprise really that the game's been called off, but it's tough nonetheless. You know, there's a lot of people looking forward to the game and trying to get down there today, but it's not to be. And we've got, I'm sure, lots to digest today.
Definitely have, and also the view from, well, I suppose the other side of the pond, you could call it. Marco Barda joining us from Germany today. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, hello everyone. Nice to be here like always, and yeah, looking forward to at least talk a bit about football and not so much about the other stuff that's going around.
Yeah, definitely no worries for anyone hoping to avoid all of the kind of that sort of the ongoing situation. Let's call it that. It feels a bit kind of Mitchell and Webb look that the event. Hopefully not too much talk about that today. So let's get on then with we'll be recapping the year of 2021 first off. Then we'll be going through the awards. We got the likes of the Player of the Year, the Hal Robson-Kana Award for Underachievement, Golden Moment, Worst Moment. Lots of fun awards to be handing out later on, and of course a look ahead to 2022. But first, let's go into the recap and talk about the year that we are just leaving behind. And of course, as we do that, a big thank you always to our sponsor, ZCZ Films, and our Patreon subscribers. Right then, let's rewind to January the 1st and see how we've got on this year.
Come rain or shine, it's time to relive the latest match action with the recap.
This podcast is sponsored by ZCZ Films, Reading's oldest ultras.
So let's take it back to January the 1st and see where Reading were in the championship compared to now. Reading was sixth in the championship as the year began, 4 points off automatic promotion, 2 points clear of seventh place. Just a day later, we come from behind to beat Huddersfield, courtesy of 2 Lucas João goals. Since then, Reading have won 16, drawn 12 and lost 18 championship matches. We've also lost 2 Star Academy products on the cheap. We've endured a continual transfer embargo. I'm pretty sure that has actually been the entire year under a transfer embargo now. We've lost several stars to injuries, unfortunately, and we've been deducted 6 points by the EFL. But we have signed Andy Carroll, so it's not been all doom and gloom this year, has it?
No, exactly. It's been a bizarre year. Absolutely, it's been unpredictable. And if you'd said halfway through the year that we'd end it with Andy Carroll in the squad, Danny Drinkwater in the squad, I wouldn't have believed you, to be honest. But although there's been some really challenging times, there's been some really interesting times as well. And being able to see these stars come to the team, it's been, there have been some really bright moments for us. And yeah, it's been trying at times, but yes, some entertaining stuff to cover as well.
Definitely. And, obviously the start of the year, as I say, being in the playoffs, Reading looking forward. I think, even at the moment, there was always in the back of my head, there was the sense that we were kind of punching above our weight, Ben, and it did kind of feel that Reading were at the crest of a wave, and it was just depended how long we could ride that forward. And the fact that Reading ultimately did drop out, I mean, does it tarnish with the 6 months looking back now? Does it kind of tarnish that season that Reading didn't make it to the playoffs? Does it actually still feel like it was a really good season, especially given the fact that football for a lot of people was kind of their salvation at that point, and Reading ultimately put on a decent show?
Yeah, I mean, it's this time, sort of last year, we were very much looking up and heading into the new year. We all had aspirations of getting playoffs kind of minimum really at that point, and it was a good kind of escape. But I think it really did kind of hurt quite a lot when we fell away, and that's Sim put up a tweet sort of earlier in the week about the Bournemouth game being the highlight and the pinnacle, and he's right, because from there it seems like it's all gone downhill a little bit, really, both on and off the pitch. I think we're in a very different place now to 12 months ago, and being realistic, we need to stay in the league. That's the bottom line, really. Could we have anticipated this time last year? Yeah, probably. I don't know what kind of we would have been able to do financially if we had been able to get in the playoffs, then obviously gone up through that way at the end of last season. But it's been it really has been a roller coaster, and we were looking at a very different team this time last year in terms of stability and performance and general, just the kind of the positivity around the place, even though we weren't there. We always had that kind of cloud. We knew that something was rumbling in the background with the finances and the kind of potential points deduction. But I think there's also a lot of relief now that that's done and dusted, and we can hopefully move on and stick to the guidelines that we've been given by the EFL, move on from there. But I think there's very much a mix in the fan base about how they see certainly the next 6 to 12 months going with the club, and we just hope that it will be we'll be looking up again rather than down sooner rather than later, really.
In terms of where this year started, I mean, January was pretty solid. We were unbeaten actually, but there were no signings, and I wonder whether that was kind of the turning point, because Reading then entered what is the business end of the season off the back of kind of some late defeats to Brentford and Millwall. They were gut-wrenching, but I remember at the time thinking, Brentford, obviously, they're a really good team. We played well against them, couldn't quite get the point. Millwall, it kind of felt like the team was running out of legs, and that was very much foreboding for the rest of the year, because we had defeats. There was the 1-0 defeat to Wickham. Fans were in pandemonium about that. We just didn't really know how to get those kind of vital wins over the line. We actually only lost 2 of the last 13 league games. 7 of them, unfortunately, were draws, and that kind of took their toll. Finished 7th, 7 points off the playoffs. And Marco, I was saying about the turning point there, maybe the lack of signings. When was the turning point for you for that, the early part of 2021, as we entered a situation where we were constantly kind of fighting against the tide, as it were, in terms of getting good results back to back?
Well, yeah. First, I think you're absolutely right that the point of having no signings during that transfer window was probably the key factor within that, because I would say that we had the quality to get to the playoffs, but we only had a squad of quality players at that level of about 13, 14. So if you have to play them every Saturday, every Tuesday, in the end of that season, that's too much. So you can't add some fresh legs. And I think that was the main thing. And I would say that in some way, one of the best moments probably of the year was also the beginning of the turning point, because when we beat Bournemouth at home in late January, I think from there on we felt pretty comfortable. We were optimistic, we could reach the playoffs, and from that moment on, at some games and a period later in the beginning of March, we couldn't get to the same level like before. So I think, well, there won't probably be just one single match where I would say that was the turning point, but maybe the period around February and March, where it's so important to add some fresh legs, to mix the squad a bit, mix the starting 11, just to enter the decisive period with enough power. And I think that was the crucial part of it.
Yeah, we certainly found that. I mean, there are lots of games, aren't there? I remember the QPR home game just being a game that drifted Reading by, basically. And we went into the summer then, and it was a weird summer. There wasn't no players were signed until August the 12th, which is spectacularly late by any margins. And by which point, Omar Richards left on a free to Bayern Munich. Michael Olise went to Crystal Palace for his release clause of about £8 million. Thierry Neves also went, a promising youngster, to West Ham. The signings that came in, all pretty minimal, free agent kind of loan deals as well. Sim, could the club have done better in terms of bringing in players? Because you look at certainly some of the names, Drinkwater, obviously later on Carroll, Halilovic. I think I look at these signings and think that they are certainly not the problem. They have all, I think pretty much all of them have done a decent job. And I'd actually say the club's summer business was really decent for what they could get out.
All in all, I think it's probably the best bit of recruitment in the summer we've done in quite a while, really. I mean, all players have come in and actively improved the first team. I wouldn't say anyone has been kind of just making up the numbers in any way. Obviously, some have had more of an impact than others, but they've all been quality individuals in their own right. They've brought in experience, versatility, real quality into the first team. And when you consider just how difficult it was to bring players in at all, given that we were looking at people like Ashraf Lazar on a trial and Kyle Edwards on a trial, players that really wouldn't have been very good in this team at all, for us to end up with 7 really high quality players at this standard, I think, by the end of the window, and Andy Carroll coming in later, obviously, it's really impressive. And I know we often kind of criticise things like the club's long-term planning and its strategy off the pitch and everything. But to be fair to the club, they really pulled out some really impressive business in that summer. And if we're going to be successful this season, if we're going to be competitive this season, a lot of it is going to go down to those quality additions we managed to bring in.
Ben, when it came to the start of the season, late points being dropped was really the theme, wasn't it? And is it the late points being dropped because of, some fans saying, it's Paunovic was the problem, or the players aren't good enough, or, that their injuries are being caused by, X, Y, or Z in the medical department? Or was it late points dropped because of exactly what we've just spoken about? There were no summer signings till August 12th. We'd lost key players. There was just a general sense of uncertainty around the club. Those sort of fine margins, are we able to comfortably say that they were the fault of just the general lack of being able to build the squad earlier? Would a Reading team that had been built from July the 1st with those players started the season and just been much more assured generally? Or, what was the cause of these poor results to begin with?
Well, I think, we lost some major players, both in terms of transfers, Olise and Richards in particular going in the summer, but also, we lost Mate pretty early on. We lost a couple of other players that were out for quite early in the season, and we knew we were going to be without them. But I think there was just far too much uncertainty, really. I think I'm still not really sure what, when we've got kind of most of our players fit and they're available for Pauno, I'm still not really sure what the best system to play is. And, to my mind, the earlier you do your business and you go, right, this is my team, this is how I want to set them up, you're going to build cohesion and you're going to be able to, have a plan A, have the dreaded plan B that everyone wants to keep talking about, and really kind of kick on from there. And I think there was a lot of disruption because of the late additions. I think the other thing as well was what we were seeing with those games is that they'd reached a wall where there was a lot of fatigue in the games. And, ordinarily you'd bring on a little bit of experience or some players that had a bit of know-how in those games and just to kind of see them out, whether that's to get the point or the win or whatever it was that we were looking for in those individual games. But we didn't have that. We had a very, very young, I say naive in a positive way, bench because those players had not had experience of Championship football. And Pauno felt for whatever reason that they weren't the right people to bring on, and that kind of led to the other sticking point with supporters about not making substitutions. But you could be in danger of making it worse. Really, the early season form was all right. That we did chuck away some points, as you say, but really we kind of picked up a little bit more when those players that we eventually signed came in. We went for that week of just buying or bringing in the players that clearly had been on the cards for a long time. And you think about Andy Carroll in isolation. I mean, that was touted towards the end of the transfer window, and we got it done sort of late November or whatever. So these things take time, and I think that really did cost us at the start of the season. And I generally do feel that points deduction included, we would be looking higher up the table if he'd been able to bring in players earlier and kind of settle them down and play the system that he wanted to play. I think those players will be enough for us to stay in the division this year. I think we'll have enough experience in the team, but as we said off air, this might be a blessing in disguise, this game, where we might be able to, this game being off this weekend, we might be able to get some players back and move forward. So it'll be interesting to see if he can get some cohesion and some gelling in the team moving forward.
Well, yeah, and this is the situation we're in now, isn't it? Because you go through the results from the end of 2021, and we were thumped by Huddersfield, which for me was just perhaps the worst performance of the season. We picked up the 5 wins from 6, then 4 straight defeats, and the inconsistency, has arguably settled down into great consistency now, because going into Christmas now, Reading have won 2, drawn 2, lost 2 of their last 6. The 6-point deduction is the reason that Reading are 2 points above the drop zone. And we're, as a fan base now, we enter a weird scenario, because you could probably divide the fan base up at the moment into several different parts. We're not a kind of in or out fan base. You got probably fans who are relatively apathetic about the future, just generally, no matter who's in charge, no matter who we sign. Ones who are desperately worried that we're going to be, kind of effective, maybe liquidated or administration in the next few months or years. There are probably fans who are desperate to get Paunovic out. Probably fans who are still quite confident, thinking the academy or something will be the thing to bring us through. And I don't know where to place myself in this, and I don't know you guys where you find yourself in. The question of Paunovic, for one, the question has to be whether he's got the best out of the hand he's been dealt, whether he should have dealt himself a better hand, with signings, whatever. I don't think we know enough to say for sure, but the fact is that this, certainly in the second half of 2021, Reading have had monstrous injuries. There's plenty of experience in the 11, but the bench has been entirely kids, whether they've been used or not. They've not been used really, but everyone will make their own decisions whether that's right or wrong. And obviously the financial stuff. Marco, for you and the Paunovic question, I don't think anyone was doubting him coming into the year, but certainly towards the end of 2021, I guess people are doubting him. I don't know where you find yourself on that plane of thought.
Well, if you separate the groups into pro and contra Pauno, I would probably be still in the one that supports him, and who believes in him and the possibility of turning everything around. It's mainly also because, like Ben already said before, and I think it's exactly the point about the cohesion is important, and also relation to the bench we had. If things are going our way, then of course you can always bring a youngster from the bench. It's also easier for a player to come in. But when things are not going our way, if we are losing, then I think it's also difficult to bring on someone who doesn't have any first team experience, and you bring him on with the hope to turn things around. So I think in terms of substitutions, Pauno didn't really have much of a choice, especially in the preparation. I checked the different lineups we had, especially in this second half of the year, and there were hardly matches to find where Paunovic had more than 2 senior players available on the bench that were older than maybe 19 or 20. So that definitely has an impact. Like Ben said before, exactly. That definitely has also an impact on the cohesion. And so I think if you have in mind that surely there are situations that we could perceive, maybe also the home game against Sheffield, where you have some tactics that you maybe can't really understand why you choose that or this formation. But in the end, I would say that I still believe that he has that connection with his squad, that he is able to motivate everyone, and hopefully once he has more players available, we can finally see what he's capable of and how good he is within tactics. Because until now, I think his tactics has been pretty limited to see, because the lineup he chose was pretty much due to the injury problems, and I can't really remember a lineup where I was surprised that he left 2 or 3 players. So in the end, that were always lineups everyone could understand, because he didn't really have much of other options.
Yeah, I know that the thing that a lot of managers say, Pep Guardiola says this a lot, and I know other managers say, is that ultimately you need the players. A good manager will not bring, Maidenhead United players to the Premier League. Like, it just will not happen, no matter how good you are. And Paunovic, I mean, at the Championship, the Reading team that has been put out this year, separating it from the quality that's in the Middlesbrough team or the Coventry team or the Blackburn team or the, even down to the Cardiff team. Pretty much all, it's not like light years apart between those those sets of teams. So Reading ultimately just kind of having to suffer the injuries, I think, and obviously the points deduction has been such a huge thing for Reading this year. Without that, they'd be kind of, obviously 17th wouldn't be brilliant, but certainly wouldn't be just on the crest or on the cusp of the relegation zone. And with 2 more games to go for 2021, Peterborough and Fulham, obviously it is plausible that Reading go into the year, into the end of the year in the relegation zone. Of course, with Peterborough playing just after this podcast, it's very plausible Reading into Christmas in the relegation zone, which certainly, while I think alarm bells will be ringing for that, we'll get onto the 2022 preview later on. I don't think it would be quite as disastrous. I certainly hope it would be, as people may think. So that was 2021, the recap. So let's go into now and hand out some awards.
For all the latest Reading news, analysis and opinion, visit the website at thetilehurstend.com.
Right then, let's start with the Player of the Year award. And this has been, well, there's some very mixed names on the list of Tilehurst End years previous. We started these awards in 2013 with Alex McCarthy taking the trophy, Jordan Abita, Ollie Norwood, Ali Al-Habsi, Liam Moore won it in 2017, John Daddy Bodvarsson in 2018. That's probably not a great sense of what year that was. Ovie Ejaria, and then Michael Morrison in 2020. Well, it's kind of, we'll get onto the correlation between the award and the Hal Robson-Kano Award for Underachievement in a bit. But what it does mean this year, then, where shall we start with this? I'm going to make the case for John Swift. I think for a player that was injured for most of last year, John Swift kind of came into the season really. I mean, we kind of knew it was going to have to be a big year from players such as Swift, Ejaria, Puskas, Lauren, etc., to come and have a great year. And I think Swift has just shown with the ability, he's added goals to his game. He's got plenty of assists, and he's just been the one to drive Reading forward. And I think perhaps carrying the team is a little bit harsh, but you've seen, but for example, the game against West Brom, Reading without Swift in their team just didn't know what to do, quite frankly, in attack so often. And the quality of his goals has been excellent. I know that, Sim, you've gone for John Swift as well. And what would you add for his performances over the year?
He's just gone from strength to strength, really. You go back a couple of years when he really struggled with injury. He seemed to be capable of the odd good performance, but not really consistent enough. And then 2019-20, he seemed to really kind of develop. And obviously had a really frustrating season last year. This year, he's just been so good with his general performance, with his goal output, assist output. And as you said, he's vital for this team. And I really do worry kind of where we're going to be next season without him. You're hard pressed to think he's going to sign a new deal ahead of next season. And he's going to leave a massive hole in this team, basically, with his real quality, his ability to essentially drag a result out of nowhere. You think of the QPR game when he got a hat trick on his own. I don't know how easily you replace a player like that at championship level. It's going to be hugely difficult, and it's a huge kind of endorsement of just how impressive he's been all this year. It's a bit odd to kind of to talk about it, I guess, given that he was not really there in the first half of the year, but just how fantastic he's been in the second half of the year more than makes up for missing the first half of the year through really frustrating injury.
Yeah, definitely. That's the frustrating thing is with John Swift is that we certainly might be about to lose him after he's been at his best, really. Marco, you've gone for a man who was voted the player of the season by the club, Josh Laurent, who, he obviously came in with relatively low expectations about 18 months ago now and coming up from League One and, I suppose with the circumstances was able to get a really good run in the team and build a partnership. How have you felt that he's been the best player of the year over the kind of whole of 2021?
Well, first of all, I think if I would just look at the second half of the year, so this the season 21-22, then I'd probably choose also John Swift because his performances have just lived with him. And but looking at the whole year, I got the feeling that Josh Laurent was probably the most consistent player. Even though also in his case, maybe the first part of the 2021 season was probably even better. But I think especially when he was playing also in that deeper midfield position, that suits him maybe more. You could see how much stability he gives to the team, how important he is. And so having the look at the whole year 2021, I somehow got the impression that he was the most consistent one and very important for the team. And so that was mainly the reason why I choose him.
Yeah, totally understand that. I think for me, Laurent perhaps has dropped off a little bit the first half of this season. He's had good games. I mean, I think he was good at West Brom the other day, but just having that overall impact on the team. I mean, obviously he's had a good year. There's no doubt about it. But I do think Swift, particularly for several weeks of this first half of the season, maybe not every single week, but I think he's been arguably the best player in the league. So I think, Ben, you've gone with Luke Southwood. Interestingly, we'll get on to Luke Southwood as the most improved player award comes around. But your kind of take on Luke Southwood this year, how's that been, Ben?
Yeah, a little bit like, Swift, really. He wasn't in the team through no fault of his own, at the end of, or rather at the start of this year, but at the end of last season. And I just think he came in at a time where things needed to be changed in the defence. Whether or not Raphael had allegedly punched the whiteboard and got injured, would Southwood have got a chance? Not sure. To me, it felt like there was probably a change that needed to be made that was quite bold, and I feel like he has just gone from strength to strength. People could point to the whole game, but that is a very small blip in what's been quite a consistent block of games. And I think for his age, his previous experience and the way that he, in my eyes, certainly when he came into the team, just kind of settled that defence down and started to pick up some clean sheets was phenomenal, really. We have been lucky in recent years where the kind of the goalkeeping department has been almost overstocked with quality, which is in stark contrast to the rest of the other positions we've had in recent years in the team. But for me, he Yeah, I can completely see why you guys will probably go for him as most improved, but he's really cemented himself as one of the first names on the team sheet at the moment. You know, for a young goalkeeper, he does everything that you'd need and more. And, you know, he's got that rapport with the fans. He's under contract, which we love at Reading. You know, we love a player that's going to be in it for the long haul at the moment. But he's just had a really, really good start to 21-22, and I hope that he continues to build on that and grow in confidence and keep doing what he's doing, because we've potentially got a huge star on our hands moving forward, which is good for us, but also good for him personally. So he would be my player of the year at the moment.
Well, it's interesting as well, isn't it, moving forward, that if Raphael does go at the end of the year, I think his contract is up, then the potential for Cognac Boyce Clark, who is incredibly highly rated and still in his teenage years, as the backup to Southwood, is certainly a tantalising prospect for Reading fans. But what it does mean, the upshot is that the 2021 Tilehurst End Player of the Year is John Swift. Congratulations, John, and feel free to sign on the dotted line anytime you like in the next few months, so long as it doesn't say Newcastle United at the top. Let's go on to most improved player then. Or actually, before that, I will say that we've also had Ollie and Westy, the regulars on the show. So in their nominations, they both went John Swift. They're split, however, for most improved player. Westy has gone for John Swift with yourself, Ben, for most improved player. Marco, you've gone for Tom Holmes, and Luke Southwood, I've gone for, along with Ollie and yourself, Simon. For Southwood, to kind of add on what Ben was saying there, I think that the fact that we're not even realising that Raphael, who has won the Player of the Year award for the club before, is all intents and purposes a very good goalkeeper, and has been occasionally a bit error prone, certainly in the last few, perhaps in 2021, but otherwise is a really good goalkeeper. We're not even really mentioned him, have we, Sim? And I think that's a testament to how well Southwood has done in goal.
Yeah, absolutely. You've kind of forgotten about Raphael by this point, and that's nothing harsh on Raphael. He's just been surpassed by a really good goalkeeper, and it's been so heartening, so impressive to see Southwood come through and just finally take that chance that he's been waiting so long for. He's had to spend so much time in the academy, out on loan or anything else like that, and he's finally got his chance in the league, and he's really taken it with both hands. Been hugely impressed with his maturity, with how well he commands his box, shot stopping, distribution. I don't really see any obvious way in which he's a downgrade on Raphael, particularly on things like distribution, which was something that really concerned me with Raphael quite a lot. But Southwood's been able to come in and really be able to kind of add an extra dimension in terms of how he hits the fullback, or he goes long up to a striker, playing out under pressure with a short pass. He's just so impressive. And given that he's still relatively young, he's still relatively new to Championship football, it's surprising but hugely heartening to see him do that. And hopefully he can be a proper number one for years to come for Reading.
Previous winners of this award include Jordan Abita, Jake Cooper, Nick Blackman, Gareth McCleary, Liam Kelly, Yaku Mate won it in 2018. John Swift won it in 2019. He's nominated again this year, so 2020 can't have been that good. And Omar Richards was the 2020 winner. So with the 3 nominations, it must be Luke Southwood, who is the most improved player of Reading FC in 2021. Big congratulations to Luke, and absolutely very happy to see him in between the sticks and the academy graduate for years to come, if he can pull it off. It has to be said, however, that there's a bit of a correlation between most improved player and the next award, the Hal Robson-Carney Award for Underachievement. Both Obita and Cooper followed up their improved player award victories with underachieving award victories, if you can call it that. Previous winners of this award, unsurprisingly, Mr. Hal Robson-Carney himself took it in 2013 and 14. Sonia Luco took it in 2017 and 18, and Danny Loader took it in 2020. Now, Ben, who are you going for this one?
I went for Ajaria. it's difficult because this one, I suppose, current state of mind really. But there was a lot of people I could have picked for this one really, and I think a lot of the players I was thinking about, I don't necessarily think it's their fault because I think it's in terms of the system they're playing and the formation and so on. I mean, Ajaria was obviously excellent away at Fulham. Absolutely phenomenal. Probably the best game I've seen him play personally. But other than that, he's been pretty much non-existent in the games that I've seen him play. And I don't. The frustrating thing is I don't think it's his fault really. I think he's been quite underused. He's not had the freedom maybe that he probably needs to get on and do his job properly. But he's not been good. The other one really that I thought about for this category was Loren because obviously Marco mentioned him earlier for kind of being up there with player of the season, but for me he's massively dropped off as well. Towards the end of this calendar year, I don't necessarily think that's his fault. We were talking sort of earlier on in the week in the group chat about formation and that kind of that one in the 4-1-4-1 scenario, and him and Drinkwater just getting each other's way. So I don't necessarily think it's his fault. Obviously the other one is Puskas because he hasn't scored, and that's what you're kind of judged on as a striker. But for me, in terms of potential and kind of the excitement that we've seen in flashes from Ajaria, for me it's got to be him as the underachiever. Unfortunately.
No, I can totally understand that. He's certainly in the top 3 or 4 underachievers. George Puskas, for the record, we'll get on to him in a second, has scored 2 goals this year, including a winning goal and the only goal of the game at home to Blackburn. What was that in? That was March or February even. So we'll get on to him. I was going to go with Puskas, but I realised that we didn't have a nomination for Liam Moore, and I feel like he's at least worth a nomination for this because ultimately, I wouldn't say he had a bad start first half of the year. For players that ultimately were the only players left in the team. Generally speaking, last year pretty much everyone had a pretty decent year, but for the second half of 2021 in particular, the constant worry of him on the ball, he's generally fine. I mean, against West Brom, he had a couple of errors, almost put it in his net. But the constant fear I have of attackers running at him and him just dropping off and off and off and putting 5 yards between himself and the attacker until they either beat him as he makes a poor challenge and he finally catches up with them, or they just shoot or pass and he's, taken out of the equation. It is infuriating, and as ultimately such an experienced championship defender, there aren't many more championship defenders out there as experienced as he is. As the captain of the team, as the leader, in centre backs, the squad of centre backs we have, when they're all fit, is very decent as well, and he tends to be picked as the first choice in that. I think he's worth a nomination. I can do that safely in the knowledge that George Puskas, who took the honour in 2019, will be taking it. And Marco, for you, George Puskas, underachieving, for that particular word, why is it for George Puskas this year?
Well, I would say for 2 reasons, because as you mentioned more, I can understand everything you said about him, and I have the same fears whenever there's a quick striker running at him. But at least you can't criticize him for his effort for throwing himself into balls and whatever. So and to me, many times during the season, I somehow tried to fell with Puskas as he was the lone striker and he didn't get so much support. But in the end, there were so many matches where I thought, especially after seeing other games where Aziz came on, where Clark played, and they had a much bigger impact because they were just running a bit more. They seemed, to me at least, that they were just trying a bit more harder. And Puskas is trying as well, but it's just the feeling that he's just doing his job, but not more than that. He's not giving you the feeling that he's full of passion to show the critics wrong, and that, in addition to the fact that he just hasn't been able to score, and it's not just having not scored, but it's also the fact that he's many games he hasn't been even close to score. So it's also the fact of getting him into a dangerous situation that's missing. So I think that the mixture of having the feeling that he could do even more and not having a real impact on the game, even though he played a lot. So that's something, I think, also something that you have to have in mind. Puskás had many opportunities due to the injury problems, and there wasn't a single game where you could leave and think, okay, today was a real good performance. So that's the reasons why he is, for me, clearly the winner.
Yeah, certainly. Sim, you've gone with him as well. Ollie went with him as well. Yeah, I mean, everything. George Puskás, he has probably been the footballer we've talked about most in 2021. It's such an interesting thing, isn't it? That maybe if we wouldn't have paid £8 million for him, that wouldn't be the case. Maybe if he had been not £8 million and come out of the academy or something like that, we'd feel differently about him. But I suppose, the facts are facts. That's what Reading decided to pay for him. Reading haven't A, identified his strengths, and then B, built a team around such strengths that whatever it was that persuaded them to pay £8 million for him. And C, it's just not worked. He's just not scored many goals. He's just not been a focal point for the team. And I think, the final point I'd make is that we have lost Lucas João for pretty much all of this first half of the season. And Puskás has had his chances. He's had a run of games. He's had opportunities in front of goal, and it's just not worked out. And unfortunately, it's not an award that we enjoy giving out, I say, but George Puskás is the 2021 winner of the Hal Robson-Kanu Award for Underachievement in the Tilehurst End Podcast. The third man to pick up the award twice. God, we do have some hooners, don't we? Better times now. The golden moment of 2021. Such previous winners as the Bradford FA Cup win, beating Fulham in the playoffs, the Wigan comeback, which was orchestrated by George Puskás, in fact, and last year, the fans returning versus Nottingham Forest claimed the Golden Moment Award. And on that note, Sim, where have you gone for this year?
With John Swift's goal at Stoke City, which was on the first day of the season for us. The first goal that we scored this season, and the first goal that has been celebrated by Reading fans in person in, far too long, basically. And it's easy to kind of forget just how much we missed football when it was behind closed doors, and how much we missed little things like celebrating goals and chanting and away days and all things like that. And it all seemed to just kind of erupt in one moment when he finally scored and got us back to 1-1. A similar moment later on in the game with Liam Moore. I think he got us back to 2-2 with a header right in front of the away end, proper classic towering header from a corner. But I'm going for the John Swift goal just because of how emotional it was, how special it was, and the way he just kind of... It wasn't anything logical or anything. It was just emotional. It was pure bliss, pure joy, and the kind of thing that you can't replicate. You can't replicate when football's behind closed doors, and it was really special to be part of. And I'm delighted I went to that game, and something I look back on really fondly.
Yeah, definitely. That away day feeling of, the siege mentality as well is something that I think we all enjoy, and being able to go away. I think it probably, is it the Pele goal against Birmingham was the last away Reading following the last goal that they could celebrate. So it was really, really a long time to go without such joys. Speaking of joy, the Swansea celebration. Ben, I know this will pop up as well in the comedy moment, but let's talk about it now. The Andy Carroll goal, which, to be fair, if you went for the Andy Carroll goal itself, I'd say that's a pretty decent golden moment. But the celebration you've gone for is the particular joy in this one.
Yeah, for sure. It was the end of a really difficult week for the club. Point deduction sort of been confirmed a little bit before that. Pauno had come under quite a lot of stick, or probably the noisiest amount of stick that he'd had all season. And I just felt it galvanised the fan base for 24 hours until the next win. But it was just really good to see that. Clearly it was like a throwaway comment, which on paper, had we lost, would have just sound bonkers and would have thrown more fuel on an already building fire. But it was what we needed at that point as fans. As you said, a cracking goal anyway. Andy Carroll was first for the club, which is always going to be a landmark. But just to kind of have that celebration, at the time, it was like, what are they doing? But when you kind of look at the context of it, it was just great. And I just felt it's what we needed at that point as Reading fans. And I hope that's going to continue to spark something in the team and kind of have that bit of togetherness, because rightly or wrongly, that's something that's been levelled at the club and the players over the last few years about togetherness and being all together. So, if that celebration is a symbol of that and a catalyst for change, then it's going to be, an even more of a golden moment. But for me, it was just brought a genuine smile to my face. It was just really good to see at that point in time.
Yeah, the perfect tonic, definitely. And speaking of perfect tonic, Solly's gone for the Fulham away win earlier in this half of the season. And myself and Marco, we've gone for the first, well, I think not just the first half, I think the whole game against Bournemouth on the 29th of January. Sometimes these awards, you can end up a bit of recency bias dropping in, not to obviously drop you guys in it at all, but for January, that game against Bournemouth was the Friday night game, I seem to remember it was, and Reading coming into this one thinking, well, this is against the team that's going to do really well this season, and we're on TV, and we just whopped them. We just absolutely blitzed them. And I remember sat in my living room thinking, this is just the perfect scenario. And the second half, obviously, we did kind of sit on it a little bit, but I don't think any Reading fans were really watching it by that point. I think Reading fans were just sitting, looking out of the window with a smile on their face. So it's just a sort of game where you can just, I don't know, Marco, how did you feel about this one as well? Because it was just such a lovely feeling of constant goals going in the first half, and against a good opponent, it just felt like everything was clicking.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that was definitely the best game of the year, and it was just fantastic to watch that performance. And we've been talking before about the cohesion thing. I think in that if you see the lineup, that was pretty much the lineup we used over the whole season, and there was this cohesion feeling of that 11 players on the pitch, and also there's a substitution we made. It was just a brilliant game, a fantastic performance from the first goal scored, and against an opponent, like you said, that was supposed to be one of the biggest promotion contenders. So to see the team perform at that level with that quality was just brilliant. And I also remembered watching online, but the same way, I suppose, like everyone else. And it was just, you could just really fully enjoy that moment. And it was a fantastic performance and a fantastic game that we could watch on the television.
Yeah, that third goal, Ajari into Zhao finishing off, it was liquid football. And I think, I can't remember whether it was on Tilehurst End or someone put it on Twitter the other day, that was bait. Since then, it's all been downhill, which is pretty much true, isn't it? Looking at the table on that night, Reading went level on points with Swansea in second. Obviously, they had a game in hand at that point, and it really did feel like it was automatic promotion was a genuine possibility. And I think that's going to be the golden moment winner for 2021, that performance against Bournemouth that put Reading, it really was when the hope and the belief was at its top level. And alas, things can't always stay the same, and that's why we go on to the worst moment now of 2021, from the good to the bad. And I'm going to start with my nomination for this one, which is Lucas Zhao's miss versus Barnsley, which just, as you know, it's interesting, isn't it, to separate the comedy moment from the worst moment. And comedy, I think, is something that you can obviously you look back and laugh on, and you think, oh well, that was just a silly moment that Reading something didn't work out or whatever, and that's fine. And, you know, the world goes on and we kind of continue and get over it. But this miss, almost certainly the worst miss in the Championship all season. It denied us 2 points at a massive rival. It would have been a huge boost of confidence had we got it. We also would have, you know, been fifth, been above Barnsley, been 3 points clear of Bournemouth in seventh had we done it. But it just didn't happen. It just, the way it fell to him, and because we'd actually kind of forced him into an error to do it as well, unfortunately just didn't work out for Reading. That's my worst moment of the year. Sim, what are you saying for this one?
Losing Elise for 8 million was an absolute gut punch, to be honest. And I know we'd talked for a while about the possibility of a release clause, and to me it seemed like something had just been made up. I couldn't really believe that something like that would be true. And then to see that not only that existed, that release clause existed, and it was going to get activated, losing a player for that little amount of money who would ordinarily have been worth clear of 20 million, certainly, when you look at the amount that Jude Bellingham went for a couple of years ago. And it really seemed to sum up just how kind of frustrating last season was, in the sense that we really came on so strong and we really made such leaps of progress. But at the end of the day, it was all for pretty much for nothing, really, because there wasn't enough in the way of proper foundations being laid below it. And we didn't get a proper return for Elise, in terms of only getting him for getting 8 million for him. Similarly, Omar Richards, but really it's seeing Elise going for that little amount of money, and obviously looking at him doing well in the Premier League with Crystal Palace. It's great to see him doing that, and I'm really happy for him, but I really wish we'd got so much more than 8 million for him.
Yeah, really could have set the club on, you know, if it's 20 million, I think, does the points deduction happen? Probably still does, because it's from a different period, but you just think maybe the transfer embargo doesn't happen as such. Well, yeah, it is definitely one of those what-if moments that Reading ultimately, no matter what way you look at it, have come out worse on. Marco, you've gone for losing Elise, or the second half of the Blackpool game, which we dropped from 2-0 up, lost 3-2. Otherwise, the injuries that we've suffered this year. Ben, I mean, ultimately, I think this probably has to be the winner, doesn't it? The points deduction, Ollie's gone for this as well. The moment of it landing, I suppose it's something that we knew was happening. And even perhaps there were people playing it off as a good thing because we thought maybe it'd be 9 points or whatever. But yeah, for the points deduction eventually hitting, and certainly as we're sat here now on the cusp of relegation zone, it really hammers home that if you're going to have anything happen in football, taking points off you is probably the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, I kind of part agree with those people that say, actually, it's a positive thing. It's done and dusted, and, you know, it could have been 9, 12, whatever. But, you know, it for me, it's what it stands for. And I think it's a statement saying that your club's basically just got out of control. And, you know, as a football player, you go out and your sole focus is to get 3 points, or it should be to get 3 points. So to basically have 2 games taken off you must be, you know, horrendous, really, and not of your own doing. So it was, you know, it was an embarrassing time as a Reading fan, or as Reading fans. Some of us are quite proud, and, you know, we're a small club with a small fan base, but you don't want your club being talked about in a negative way, and having a points deduction like that is not good, and it's unnecessary attention that we didn't want, and to have it in our 150th year as well, a year that you know, 5-6 years ago we would all been sort of really building towards and really positive. And it's, you know, it's a kind of a symptom of a bigger problem in terms of where we are, and you know, again, there's quite a few that we could have picked really for this, but I honestly feel that having the points deduction in particularly in this year is kind of definitely the worst moment of the year, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And that is the winner, if you can call it that, of the worst moment of 2021 for Reading. Just to kind of keep you up to date with the previous winners, we lost 6-1 to Birmingham in 2014. Last year, it was the 3-0 defeat at home to Wigan, losing 4-1 at home to Fulham, 4-0 at home to Ipswich. Liam Moore missing a playoff penalty. Yeah, let's get on let's get past that and talk about the comedy moment of 2021 for Reading. We've already spoken about it, so we won't go into too much detail again, but myself and Mark have gone for Andy Carroll's goal celebration at Swansea, the old rowboat and the corner flag, and that brilliant video of the Swansea fan who filmed himself. Oh, no, Andy Carroll again, that sort of stuff. It was cracking to cause that much misery to a fan base. Nothing against Swansea, just that's what you do when you go away from home. Westie's gone for the Wickham game, which we lost 1-0 away from home, then being bottom of the league, man sent off, missed penalty, and plenty of sitters being missed as well. This is the interesting one, Sim, is that just if you don't really follow Reading, why is Da Young running on the pitch the comedy moment of 2021?
It felt like the moment this year when 2021 just seemed to jump the shark. It was utterly bizarre, utterly unpredictable. Not just someone running on the pitch, not just someone who isn't a player running on the pitch, but the fact that an owner that we've still not heard from him in terms of actually hearing what he sounds like. The amount of video evidence of his existence is severely limited. You could make a convincing argument that he doesn't actually exist as a real person, basically. And so to randomly see this video on Twitter after the game, I think it's from Jonathan Lowe, of him charging across the pitch in this bizarre fashion, just seemingly because he just happened to want to have a race with other people on the pitch. It was just so bizarre, so unexpected. It felt like whoever had scripted Reading's year had just randomly come up with the most bizarre thing they could possibly think of and just thrown it in there. And yeah, I mean, it's the perfect comedy moment because it didn't really mean anything. It wasn't negative in any way. It didn't really speak to anything particularly kind of wide and awful in the same way that, say, the Wickham game might have done in the sense of wider significance. But it was hard to get your head around and, yeah, hilarious at the time.
It was, wasn't it? Because basically, if this happens in the Premier League, or if one of the Glazers done it, or David Gold is running down the pitch of West Ham, that becomes a huge footballing comedy moment, doesn't it? That becomes like a Delia Smith, Let's Be Having You sort of moment that gets played on, match of the day titles and all sorts of silly stuff for years. But because it's Reading and the footage of it is, filmed by a journalist who's kind of on his phone, just kind of, hang on, what's that going on down there? It doesn't happen, but I guess we can enjoy it exactly the same. And yeah, there's no kind of problem with it. There's no bad element of it really, unless you want to start insinuating things. It's just something that happened that was funny, and that's why it's the comedy moment of 2021. Ben, you went for Kingsley out of interest. What was your nomination, just to round this off?
Yeah, I just think it's bizarre that Kingsley's just disappeared, and it's not like the club aren't mentioning, because every time I've spoken to him, for Star or for other media stuff, like, they've always mentioned him. Oh, he's coming back, but he's still not arrived. And I don't understand why they can't just come out and go, oh yeah, well, we've either let him go or we've sold the suit or whatever. But like the fact they keep kind of alluding to him coming back and then, he's just never there is crazy, really. As conspiracy theorists will say that the game was postponed because Kingsley wasn't ready for this weekend, for the celebrations. But I don't know. I just think it's bizarre, absolutely bizarre. But I think Da Young probably just about nicks it, really, because that was just insane as well. You just couldn't write the script for this year, to be honest.
Well, maybe 2022 will feature Da Young in a Kingsley suit. Let's wait and see if that turns out to be our comedy moment for the year coming up. So Da Young, then congratulations. Not only do you own Reading Football Club, you also are now the winner of the 2021 Tilehurst End Podcast Comedy Moment Award. Well done. I'm sure you'll be very pleased and definitely listening to hear that. Previous winners, in fact, does involve another former owner of the club, Lady Sassima Song in 2015. Ipswich scored from a corner in 2018, and last year was the Kenyan fandom of Ayub Tambe. So yeah, definitely some comedy moments to add to there. Final couple of awards there before we go for the year. The Pavel Pogrebniak Missed Player Award. Ollie's gone for Yaku Mate. Ben, you've gone Andy Winamota. Sim, you said Michael Lee's kind of on what you're saying earlier, but myself and Marco have gone for a fully fit Lucas João. We can basically just describe this in the inverse of the George Puskas conversation we had earlier, because for everything that George Puskas has done, and we've said, oh, he's not been good enough, X, Y, and Z, Lucas João being in the team solves that problem, doesn't it, Marco? And I suppose that just underlines what we lack when he's not in the team.
Yeah, exactly. And I would add as well that he is fully motivated, because as we could see at the end of last season, if he's not fully motivated or not positive enough, then he can be also a lost player up front. But if you have a fully fit Lucas João and him very positive on everything, getting into a flow like he did for most parts of last year's season, then I think he's definitely a big key player. And he's also very much missed on the pitch because of his presence, of his danger in front of the goal. So yeah, that's for me the most missed Reading player.
Yeah, I mean, this year particularly, you can name so many most missed Reading players. I think Omar Richards would probably be worth a nomination in most years. Alas, this is kind of where we're at. Certainly, I can understand why you guys have gone for Elise, Mate, and Reina Motta, but the winner of the most missed Reading player for the second year in a row, in 2020, he was most missed as well, is Lucas João. Congratulations, Lucas. You won't win. Either you'll win best player or most missed. It depends whether you stay fit or not. And final award then is the Breakout Prediction Award. Some absolutely cracking previous winners of this. Royston Drenthe in 2013, Dominic Samuel 2014, Jonathan Bond 2015, all of which obviously went on to have amazing Reading careers. Yaku Mate in 2016, Omar Richards, those are some better ones. Michael Elise also won it in 2019 after Danny Loader, and last year it was Dejan Tetek, who I think, maybe Paunovic would have given him a bit more time on the pitch. We'd be saying that was a better breakout prediction than it was. So we've all gone for different players this year. Ollie's gone for Jamari Clark. Westy has gone for Michael Stickland, the 17-year-old defender. Sim, you can start us off with this one.
To be honest, this one was the most difficult of all the awards to go for, really, because there's so many pretty promising players we've got in the academy at the minute, but not too many that have really kind of had a proper chance to have a proper run in the team. I thought about Femi Aziz for a little bit, given that he's already scored a couple of goals in the first team and he looks promising. But the one that I went with in the end was Jack Senga, a guy who's been out on loan at Maidenhead. He's yet to play for the first team, I think, although he's been involved on the bench. But he looks really impressive when I saw him a couple of weeks ago at Bromley in the FA Youth Cup. He seems like a very composed, yet also physical midfielder. I think he can play in defence as well. But the thing that kind of elevates him for me is the fact that he's gone out on loan and he's got that experience already. And when you look at how many players we've got in the academy at the minute who are promising players, but they've had minimal exposure to first team football, you think of, say, Ashcroft, who's come in and that's been his very kind of sudden introduction. Having that basis of going out and playing alongside men in senior football, even in non-league, will stand in really good stead, I think. And given that we're probably going to lose a few midfielders in the summer, Josh Laurent will probably be off, Andy Rinomota might be off, Drinkwater at the end of his loan spell, there's going to be an opening for players to come in. And look, there's every possibility that he comes in and gets an opportunity and he really takes it. Obviously, it's hard to know how well he will do so, given that some players take a little bit longer to really come through properly. But what I've seen from him so far, limited amounts admittedly, it looks really promising, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him.
And what are you saying for your breakout prediction? When you put this on the list, I did have to Google and realise it's actually someone who only joined in October.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone for Rashawn Scott because all of the all of the kind of the clips and the little bits that I've seen, but also that I've read about him and how involved he's been in the games that he's played for, for the under-23s, he's been very active in that midfield role. He's putting assists, he's getting shots off, he's creating chances, and a little bit like Sim, really. I can see our midfield being very, very better at the end of this season. My only concern with Scott is that he's only signed, to my knowledge, a deal until the end of this season. Like every other Reading player seems to do these days. So he could well be off as well. But I'm hoping that if there is movement in the first team, that he will look at that and go, actually, I've done quite well this year. I'll stick around and see what happens. And the club put faith in him. The only potential issue is that he is still very, very young. I think he's coming in about 18, 19. So he's still got a lot to learn, I guess. He's come from a good background in Chelsea, and he seems to be a very, very good player. So, there are a number of players that we could choose for this award. But for me personally, Rashawn Scott is the one that I'm going to pin my badge on and hope that he kind of breaks into the first team at some point this season.
Yeah, I can definitely understand the Chelsea vibes for that. We picked up some very good players off Chelsea, Michael Olise being one of them. In that, I have gone for, and I mean, if I was working for the club right now, I really would, because I feel really bad about it every time that I say their name, because I know I'm probably not the only one. That's ultimately just not a name that we English are very familiar with, and I'm going for my breakout tip. The duo, the brothers of Kelvin and Princeville, Aber Choman. Now, that's probably said wrong. I hope that sometime I can be told I'd say it right. But the fact that we've got two young brothers in the academy, Princeville, who's 16 and has been playing a little bit for the under-23s, scored a couple goals for the under-18s this year, and Kelvin, who isn't in the under-23s and has been on the bench a few times as well this year. It'd just be great, wouldn't it, to have those two leading the line? Probably won't happen in 2022, but certainly they're my breakout tip. Maybe, as I say, if it doesn't happen now, then maybe it'll happen soon. And generally speaking, I mean, looking across, this is the difficult thing for the academy this year, is because Reading got rid of quite a lot of under-23 players 18 months ago as the pandemic bit. And basically now our under-23 team is our under-18 team, and our under-18 team is our under-16 team almost. That's kind of, everyone's just been nudged up because we had to cut a generation as we needed every penny we could get. Luckily, some of that generation are still making it, and one of those players, Marco, is who you've gone for your nomination.
Yeah, I went for Femi Aziz. Well, as everyone before said, I could have chosen also any other different player that you already mentioned. And I choose him because, first of all, I think he got the quality to definitely have a breakout year. And apart from that, well, you said before that in midfield there might be some more options available by the end of the season or beginning of the next one. But I also think that up front we are for now pretty limited, having in mind that Joao and Mete will be still out for some time. With the Puskás situation, we already talked before, so I think at least in the rest of this season, he will, if he stays fit, he will has his time to perform, and if he does that, the way he already showed it during some of the games he played, then I'm confident he can be a key figure, or at least a regular player for next season.
Yeah, well, I think, because, I mean, as we've all gone different, I'm going to have to make a judgment call there. I'm going to go with Femi Aziz because of all the players that can make an impact now for 2022, I think he's definitely up there, isn't he? And because, I mean, the question as to whether he qualifies or not, we gave it to Royston Drenthe in 2013, so clearly age isn't a problem. I think because he's not quite had the chance to show himself over like a 10 or 15 game period, injuries have been a problem. Maybe injuries will always be a problem. Maybe he's going to be one of those sort of players, but hopefully not. And Aziz then certainly has the credentials that we've seen so far, the pace, the direction, the movement and all the sort of stuff. Maybe if he can just add that end product, he will be a top class championship player. So the 2021 breakout prediction for the Tilehurst End Podcast goes to Femi Aziz. Congratulations, Femi. Let's go on then and talk about the future even more, because we will be previewing, to round off the show, 2022.
Be loud and be proud and back the boys and make some noise. Come on, you R's!
Shout out to this week's podcast sponsor, ZCZ Films, showing that age is no barrier to being a hula hoop.
Right then, let's talk about 2022. It feels weird, this entire podcast. I've had to stop myself the entire time from thinking that we're reviewing 2020, because it just feels like we've just lost a year, basically, and trying to calibrate my mind into where we're at is just difficult. And it's 2022 we've got coming up. We'll take just a bit of context as to what we're going to discuss. Now, the Tilehurst End Podcast will be back in the first week of 2022. Because of, obviously, the postponement does mean there's quite a bit of gap, unfortunately, but that's not sort of something we can control. The immediate preview then will be of the Peterborough, Fulham and Derby games we've got coming up. Sim, we go into this with just 2 points. Well, actually, we don't, because we don't actually know whether Peterborough will win on Saturday, because that takes place in about 5 minutes' time from where we're recording this now. But either way, Reading go into this game against Peterborough. It's a de facto relegation 6-pointer. I don't feel like Reading particularly deserve it to be a 6-pointer, but that's what it is. And it just shows that these next few games could actually be quite pivotal to how the season ends up.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, it's a really difficult set of games to predict, really, given how much is going on in the world, how much of a gap there will have been since the West Brom game. It feels like whatever our next match is going to be, we're just going into it fresh, essentially. And on one hand, that's a little bit worrying, given that we won't have had we'll have had less momentum, we'll have had less kind of chance to get some proper cohesion from the last match. But on the flip side, it could be really good for us. It could be really good in terms of getting players back from injury, in terms of just having a little bit of a mental reset as well, because the West Brom game really was poor, really was the kind of performance we need to flush out of our system. And yes, there were problems in terms of missing players, missing John Swift, Yeardom Drinkwater. But really, we just need to kind of push that behind us and essentially just go again, basically, and get a bit of positivity behind it. That's going to be difficult, given, well, how much is going on in the world and how worried everyone is naturally at the minute. But hopefully that mini reset will allow us to go in with a bit more positivity, a bit more of a sense of taking the game to the opposition. Because that's another thing. In some of our recent home games, we've not been positive enough. We've not been able to set the intensity and the tempo enough. Hopefully a bit of a recharge will allow us to adjust that side of our home performances as well and do that, and we've got a decent chance.
And if we lose to Peterborough, obviously, I mean, I'm not even going to go near social media that evening because of what will be going on, but the facts of it, will Reading suddenly be looking like a team that could actually go down? Because, as I say, you take the points deduction out of it, Reading aren't particularly near the relegation zone this season, albeit having not been that great. But if we do find ourselves, we could find ourselves a few points adrift by then, will that be a time when actually every Reading fan does kind of need to sit down and think this is a serious problem and we could go down? Yeah,
I mean, look, I said to you last week on the pod that Luton would have been a must-win game. As we said at the top of the podcast, we could end up by the time this goes live, really in the bottom three because of other results, because, we're not playing today. But look, Peterborough's going to have to be, if it goes ahead, and I would be at this stage surprised if it does go ahead for a number of reasons, but if it does, it's a must-win game, and realistically, we're looking at that next batch of games and we're thinking we've got to get at least 6 points, if not more, from that, because we need to get up the table now. And I was reading an article which I'm sure everyone else has tapped into, but Nathan Spafford, I think, is it Sim, the guy who wrote the article this morning, he made the point that there's realistically going to be probably one relegation spot. Derby need an absolute miracle. Barnsley look to be, one of the worst, if not the worst footballing side in the league this season. So it leaves one open. And I think, with all due respect to Luton and Peterborough, we needed to have beaten Luton today had we been playing. We have to beat Peterborough on Boxing Day, and if not, that there are going to be some serious questions, and those rumblings are going to grow louder. Really, I really hope that by the time we come back on the pod in the new year, we've got, as I said, at least 6 points in. Derby is another game at home that we'd look at and say, well, yeah, that's got to be a winnable game. Fulham, difficult to predict that one, but going into the new year, we have to start getting some momentum from somewhere, and we're not asking as fans for fantastic performances, but we just need to get those points on the board. For the confidence of the players, that needs to be boosted. For everyone around the club, it needs to be boosted, and really, if those games go ahead, we just have to go and do as much as we can to get those points on the board.
Looking ahead then, 12 months' time, it's the 18th of December 2022. Maybe by then I'll not be locked in or unable to leave my house or something like that drastic. Hopefully, let's tackle this question like we are living in a semi-normal society. What position will Reading Football Club be in then, Marco? Will Reading effectively just be where we are now, kind of scrapping in lower mid-table championship with financial problems looming and uncertainty over the future? Will we be in League One? Where do you think we will be this time next year?
Well, first of all, hopefully we will be still in the championship, and I'm confident that will be the case. And I have to say, I would be pretty happy if next year, especially next summer, we can do the planification of the season with a bit more structured, a bit more in a normal way, in the sense that we can do signings, even though they might have to be without paying any fee. But if we could do a kind of normal preparation of the season with most parts of the squad already available, and especially a season without that many injuries, I would be pretty happy. And if that happens, I'm confident we will have a season without relegation trouble. If it's enough to push again forward with the players, I'm not sure about. But for me, the most important thing would be to get the squad together, to get some new context to important players. We talked about Swift, that it's pretty impossible, but there are others like Tom Holmes, for example, who I think would be an important figure to sign a new contract. And if we are able to do that and go into the season, to next season with in a bit more structured way, with one or two signings at least at the moment, where you can do also the full preparation with them, then I would be very happy about that. And being realistic, I would go for a mid-table season, maybe with some slight hopes to get a bit higher in the table.
To round us off then, Sim, if you're Dae-Yong Pang and you come into the office on 2nd of January or whenever it is, let's face it, you've got a lot of jobs on. You're not going to be finished. You're not going to be knocking off at 4 p.m. many days, because there is a lot to sort out at Reading Football Club. But what are the first sort of things that Reading needs to sort out in the first few weeks of 2022 to make sure, obviously, that we're not relegated, and then just to basically build the foundation of the club up again?
Just getting the contract sorted first and foremost, really. And obviously there's so many players out of contract, and there are players in there who can and should be the backbone of the squad for a few years to come now. Andy Yeardom, who I really like and I really rate, I'm going to be very disappointed if he goes, very sad if he goes, because I really like him. Tom Holmes has been mentioned as well. Josh Lauren, Andy Rinomota, Femi Aziz, I think, is out of contract as well. And these are players that we do need to get tied down. And if you can get them tied down, then we have the basis of a decent squad next season. I know there's a lot of worries over how much we can do in the context of the business plan and things like that, but we do have some good players. We just need to tie them down, basically. But to be honest, if I'm Dae-Yong Pang, one of the biggest things I want to do is get in a director of football, because you look at the business we did in the summer, a lot of it was relying on Veljko Paunovic having to go out and negotiate things and look for players and things like that. Dai Yongpang is not a football man in the sense of having that real knowledge of how the game works and things like that and negotiating. Paunovic needs help. He needs extra firepower, essentially, behind the scenes to go out and look for signings, let Paunovic focus on the team, get someone else in there who knows how to build a squad, how to overview it, basically, and how to plan for the long-term future. I don't know exactly what that person looks like in terms of experience, in terms of things like that. Maybe get back someone who knows the club from years ago. Maybe have a younger person who comes in and develops. It's something you could give to Michael Morrison, for example, who I think has shown some kind of enthusiasm for doing something like that later in his career. But whoever we appoint, whatever kind of appointment we make in terms of the job brief, we need someone like that to give ourselves the maximum chance of being competitive and of essentially getting the most from very limited resources for the next few months and the next few years, really.
Yeah, it really is a case of, I think the other thing as well, as we mentioned, is I think the EFL needs to give Reading a bit of wiggle room to sign these players up to new contracts. There is no point saying, giving Reading a transfer embargo is one thing, but ultimately saying that our financial spending is so restricted that we can't actually have footballers in our squad does kind of defeat the point at some point. So I'd like to see that. I mean, I'd like to end the year and the show on a positive note. And I think to do that shouldn't be too difficult, because we've all seen countless times over certainly the last 18 months, that this Reading team has it in them to put on a really good run of form, put in some really good displays, show some great entertaining football, go away to places like Fulham and get good results, beat teams like Bournemouth at home, and have players like Lucas Shaw and, obviously players that have gone like Elise, players that are still here, like Laurent, players that hopefully will be here for a long time, like Southwood. These are good footballers at this level, and they can all do a really good job for the team. And hopefully more academy players are going to be able to come through. Hopefully Reading are going to be able to do something in the transfer market. You have to think that at least surely the minor silver lining of players leaving at freeze at the end of the year would be that the EFL will say, you know what, you've done your time, you've served your time, go and, you've got the freedom now to kind of do what you want until we check in on you next time. Hopefully something like that happens. Hopefully there is just a sense that, as Sim says, inside the club, they're finally getting their heads around running a football club and doing the things like being able to bring in players early on and find loans and all that sort of stuff that I think in the summer they showed that they are capable of doing, but we just need to get it on it earlier. And of course, it all comes down in the end to on the pitch. Reading needs to show that they're a flexible, pragmatic team, sometimes attacking, sometimes holding back. I do think Paunovic has it in him to do that. I do think this squad of players, when fit, or at least a bit more fit than it is at the moment, has it in them to comfortably avoid relegation, even with a 6-point deduction. Hopefully they'll go out and show that. And hopefully we will be back in the new year with a very good Christmas period to talk about. Obviously, the things that are going on outside the football world at the moment, beyond our control, and might well scupper that a little bit. But we will certainly be back in the first week of January to discuss what has gone on over the Christmas period. Hopefully Reading able to get back into action as soon as possible. And as always, a big thank you to you guys who have come on this afternoon. Marco, always a pleasure to have you on, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And Merry Christmas period to everyone. Hope everyone stays safe and sound and has a good start to the new year. And was hopefully some good performances from the Royals.
And Ben as well, always a pleasure. Hopefully get you back in the Dolan end soon.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks, everyone. And, thanks for listening and reading the column throughout the year, and have a really good sort of couple of weeks over Christmas and New Year, and take care of yourselves.
And Sim, as always, a thank you for us for editing the website and everything. And no doubt fans will be really interested to see what sort of stuff we're coming out with over the Christmas period, whether there's games or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Something to look out for on that front. And Merry Christmas to everyone. And thanks for reading the site throughout the year. And hopefully got some really good stuff to write about over the next year and beyond.
Absolutely. And as always, a thank you, massive thank you to everyone who continues to listen to the podcast, read the website, follow us on social media and everything. That is ultimately why we do it. We don't do these shows to give ourselves a big pat on the back and make ourselves feel good with all our massively intelligent analysis and our incredibly hilarious intros that we spend upwards of 20 seconds writing. It really is because people tune in and have an interest and follow the football club and can, hopefully have some fan representation in how we look at the club as well. So we're always very grateful for everyone tuning in. Thank you for listening to this show as well. Hopefully there is a very Merry Christmas approaching you in the next few days. And if you're listening after that, a Happy New Year as well. We'll be back in 2022, hopefully the year that Reading, 150 years old, the old girl, hopefully got some life left in her yet. Until next time, Merry Christmas and come on you Ars.
It's funny